There's a truth most people refuse to say out loud. The higher a man rises, the simpler his desires become. After years of chasing perfection, the perfect body, the perfect face, the perfect lifestyle, a man who's reached emotional and psychological maturity starts to see through illusions. He no longer confuses high maintenance with high value. He stops measuring women by filters and fantasy. What he begins to crave is peace. A high-value man isn't impressed by appearance alone because he's already met beauty, and he knows beauty often hides chaos. He's been through the drama, the manipulation, the power games. He's tasted the glitter of attention and the poison that comes with it. What he wants now is stability. A woman who doesn't compete with him for attention but complements his peace. The world calls her average, but to him, she's rare. See, when you evolve as a man, your perception changes. You start valuing the calmness in someone's presence over the curves in her body. You start craving a genuine laugh over a rehearsed pose. The woman who doesn't perform for validation, who simply is, becomes magnetic. She doesn't need to prove she's special, and that's exactly what makes her special. High-value men live in a world full of noise, constant competition, endless opinions, social expectations. But when he meets a woman who doesn't try to impress him, who doesn't see him as a project or a prize, something clicks. Her simplicity becomes sacred. Her authenticity feels like a mirror, reflecting who he truly is, not who the world expects him to be. Average women, the ones overlooked by men chasing surface value, often carry the deepest emotional wisdom. They listen, they nurture, they respect space. They offer softness without weakness, warmth without neediness. And for a man who has mastered himself, that's not average. That's everything he's been missing in a world built on appearances. So when you hear someone say, "Why would a high-value man choose an average woman?" Remember this: value doesn't live in aesthetics, it lives in energy. High-value men see through the performance. They don't chase excitement, they crave equilibrium. Because after mastering the world outside, the ultimate victory is mastering peace within. And the woman who helps him guard that peace becomes the most valuable thing of all. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood. A private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once. Grow forever. Let's dive in. Section 1. The illusion of high-value women. Modern culture has redefined what value means, but not in a way that serves truth. We live in an era where appearance has replaced essence and visibility has replaced depth. The term high-value woman has been twisted into a checklist. Looks, lifestyle, followers, filters, and confidence that's often louder than it is real. But a man who has walked through enough fire can see behind that illusion. He knows the difference between displayed value and embodied peace. A truly high-value man doesn't look for someone who can shine in the spotlight. He looks for someone who can stay grounded when the lights go out. He understands that beauty without humility becomes arrogance, and confidence without compassion turns cold. The women who call themselves high value sometimes forget that real value doesn't shout. It whispers through character, consistency, and calmness. When a man is still growing, still insecure, He's drawn to the performance, the show of perfection, the competition for attention. But once he's evolved, the attraction flips. He starts to see that the loudness of "look at me" energy often hides emptiness. He's not moved by how well she poses. He's moved by how well she listens. He doesn't want to be impressed. He wants to be understood. And this is where the illusion fades. The so-called average woman often carries the very traits that the world no longer celebrates: patience, empathy, and presence. She's not trying to prove she's special because she's busy living in alignment with who she is. She doesn't need external validation, and that quiet confidence unsettles people who depend on attention for self-worth. High-value men sense this difference instantly. They don't chase the noise anymore. They've already conquered that stage. Now, what they want is emotional depth. A woman who doesn't drain but restores, who doesn't manipulate emotion but respects it. They start to see that the truly high-value woman isn't the one flaunting her worth. She's the one protecting her peace. In the end, the illusion of high value is like gold paint on cheap metal, shiny for a moment, empty underneath. The average woman, on the other hand, often holds quiet treasures: loyalty, peace, emotional maturity. The kind of value you don't measure in currency or attention, but in calm mornings, steady love, and effortless conversations. A high-value man has no desire to be entertained anymore. He wants to be anchored. And only a woman who lives from authenticity, not ambition, can give him that. Section 2. Peace over perfection. Every man who's grown into his strength eventually learns that peace is the rarest luxury on earth. When you've worked hard, built yourself from nothing, faced betrayal, loss, and noise, the last thing you want to bring into your life is more chaos dressed as charm. You start to realize that peace is not the absence of excitement. It's the presence of emotional stability. And that's something most perfect women can't offer. Because perfection often hides pressure. A high-value man knows that peace is power. He's no longer hypnotized by the woman who turns heads. He's drawn to the one who calms his mind. Because when a man is truly evolving, his nervous system becomes the first thing he protects. He begins to notice how his body reacts around a woman. Does he feel tense? Does he feel drained? Or does he feel centered, grounded, calm? That's the real attraction. Not the curve of her body, but the curve of her energy. Perfection, as the world sells it, is exhausting. It's a constant race, an obsession with being more that never ends. But peace, that quiet stability, comes from emotional maturity. It's not loud. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't need to post every moment online to feel significant. And that's why high-value men crave it, because they've already seen what happens when you confuse stimulation with connection. The high always fades, but peace stays. Average women, the ones who don't live through performance, carry an aura of peace that can't be faked. They aren't chasing anyone's attention. Their value doesn't depend on the reaction of others. They can sit in silence without needing to fill it. And that, to a high-value man, feels like heaven. Because the man who's built an empire doesn't need a woman to impress him. He needs a woman who reminds him why he built it, to finally rest. When he's with her, he doesn't need to play games or prove anything. Her energy tells him, you can exhale here. You can stop performing. You can just be. And that's something perfection can't offer, because perfection always needs maintenance, always demands applause, always fears losing the spotlight. But peace doesn't. Peace is secure in itself. The truth is, high-value men have learned that peace is the ultimate seduction. It's what keeps them coming back long after the thrill fades. Because at the end of the day, it's not beauty that heals a man. It's peace. The woman who gives him that peace becomes unforgettable. Not because she dazzled him, but because she quieted the storms that the world kept awakening inside him. Section 3. The energy that heals, not drains. There's a kind of woman who heals you just by being around her. Not because she tries to fix you, but because her presence itself feels like oxygen after years of suffocation. She doesn't demand attention. She gives space. She doesn't control. She allows. And that, for a high-value man, is everything. After a lifetime of noise, ego battles, and emotional games, he no longer wants stimulation. He wants regulation. He wants peace that restores his masculine energy, not drains it. See, every man carries invisible scars, from the women who pretended to love him but only loved his potential, from the relationships where he gave too much and received confusion in return, from the moments he learned that kindness can be mistaken for weakness. By the time he becomes high value, emotionally disciplined, self-sufficient, stoic, he's not looking for someone to complete him. He's looking for someone whose energy doesn't disturb his calm. That's where the so-called average woman shines. She doesn't come with pre-written scripts, rehearsed emotions, or fake depth. Her love feels organic, spontaneous, simple, and sincere. She might not wear the most expensive clothes, but she wears peace. Her energy doesn't shout, "Look at me." It whispers, "You're safe here." And that's something no level of beauty can replace, because beauty might turn heads, but peaceful energy turns hearts. High-value men are highly sensitive to energy. Not emotional in the dramatic sense, but aware. They can feel when a woman's peace is real or performed. They can sense when a compliment hides manipulation. They can tell when affection is genuine or transactional. That's why, after years of experience, they start valuing energy over appearance, the invisible over the visible. The woman who heals doesn't heal by effort. She heals by essence. Her calm voice lowers his guard. Her patience teaches him that love doesn't need to be loud. Her silence doesn't punish, it soothes. She doesn't challenge his authority, she complements his purpose. Together, they create balance, not a power struggle. And that's rare in a world where most people confuse love with competition. In her presence, he remembers who he is, not the man society told him to be, but the man he's worked so hard to become. With her, his masculinity isn't tested, it's respected. His ambition isn't drained, it's understood. And his energy, instead of being scattered, starts to recharge. That's why high-value men choose women whose energy heals. Because when a man's peace is restored, he doesn't just give love, he multiplies it. Section 4. Why simplicity feels like home. When a man has seen enough of the world, the noise, the competition, the constant proving, he begins to crave something rare. Simplicity. Not in the sense of lacking ambition, but in the sense of being free from unnecessary complexity. The high-value man lives in a world full of masks and mirrors, where everyone's trying to outshine everyone else. But the moment he finds a woman who doesn't need to prove anything, it feels like stepping into sunlight after years in a storm. Simplicity is not the absence of depth. It's depth without drama. It's truth without performance. It's the kind of energy that doesn't demand to be understood. It simply is. The average woman, who doesn't chase perfection, often carries this purity effortlessly. She lives in the moment. She doesn't overanalyze every word or play emotional chess. Her presence feels like balance, grounded, steady, familiar. And that familiarity, to a man who's been surrounded by illusions, feels like home. High-value men spend their lives managing chaos. In business, in goals, in expectations. The last thing they want is to come home to more chaos disguised as excitement. They don't need constant thrill anymore. They need consistency. They need a woman who knows how to be still, who understands that peace doesn't mean boredom, it means safety. And that safety is what allows love to breathe. The world has taught women that to attract a strong man, they need to stand out. to be extraordinary, unique, mysterious. But a wise man knows real mystery lies in simplicity. The woman who doesn't broadcast every detail of her life carries a quiet allure. The one who listens more than she speaks, who smiles softly instead of performing confidence, draws him in without effort. Because she gives him what the world no longer gives: ease. To a high-value man, simplicity isn't just attractive, it's healing. It reminds him of who he was before the noise, before the pressure to be everything at once. It reconnects him to stillness, the kind that used to feel natural before ambition turned life into a race. Simplicity allows him to be human again, not a performer in his own success story. That's why average women, those labeled as ordinary by shallow eyes, often end up being the most extraordinary to the man who has learned the truth. Because their simplicity isn't lack, it's wisdom. It's the silent understanding that love doesn't need constant intensity to be real. It just needs presence. And when a man finally finds that, a woman whose simplicity feels like home, he stops searching altogether. Because for him, home isn't a place. It's a person who brings peace to his soul. Section 5. The rarity of genuine femininity. In a world that teaches women to be everything but feminine, genuine softness has become a form of rebellion. Society rewards aggression, competitiveness, and self-promotion. But true femininity, the kind that flows naturally without needing to prove itself, has become rare. And that's exactly why high-value men are drawn to it. Because it's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not submission, it's spiritual balance. A high-value man doesn't need a woman to fight his battles or mirror his masculinity. He needs her to balance it. Her grace is not about being silent or passive. It's about emotional intelligence, calm strength, and the ability to move with life instead of against it. She doesn't try to dominate him, nor does she shrink in his presence. She meets him with harmony, not hostility. And that harmony is magnetic because it reminds him of peace, not performance. The average woman often embodies this naturally. She's not trying to outshine men or compete with them. She respects the dance of polarity, masculine and feminine energy working together instead of clashing. Her femininity isn't about appearance, it's about energy. It's the gentle tone in her voice, the patience in her silence, the warmth in her care. And that subtle strength, the kind that heals without force, is something every evolved man notices instantly. You see, modern femininity has been misunderstood. Many confuse loud independence with inner power, but the high-value man sees through that. He respects ambition, but he's drawn to essence. He admires confidence, but he falls for kindness. Because he understands that true power doesn't need to shout. It radiates. The woman who carries that radiant softness doesn't need to chase validation, because she is validation. She doesn't talk about her worth, she simply lives it. High-value men have experienced both extremes, the overly dependent woman and the overly dominant one. Both drain energy. What they crave now is equilibrium, a feminine presence that nurtures without needing control. When a woman leads with grace instead of ego, she creates an emotional environment where a man can relax into his purpose. That's not submission. That's synergy. It's the quiet alignment that makes both people stronger. In that presence, the high-value man feels something rare: peace with passion. A space where he can lead without being resisted, love without being drained, and rest without being misunderstood. That's the energy of genuine femininity. Healing, patient, magnetic. It doesn't demand attention. It commands it silently. That's why, when the world calls her average, he just smiles, because he knows she carries something money, status, and looks can't buy, the rare essence of real femininity. And for a man who's tasted chaos, that energy is not just attractive, it's sacred. Section 6. Why high-value men crave emotional safety. The more a man evolves, the less he craves intensity, and the more he values safety. Emotional safety isn't about comfort, it's about freedom. The freedom to be authentic without judgment. The freedom to be silent without being misunderstood. The freedom to express vulnerability without it being used against him. For a high-value man, this kind of safety is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Because he's learned the hard way that love without safety is just another battlefield. A man who's walked through life's chaos knows how rare emotional safety is. He's been around people who only loved the strong version of him, the leader, the provider, the unbreakable one. But very few ever loved the human in him, the one who gets tired, who overthinks, who needs rest, not rescue. That's why, when he finds a woman whose energy makes him feel safe, it's unforgettable. Because safety is not excitement. It's peace disguised as understanding. Average women often provide this kind of safety effortlessly. They don't compete. They don't overanalyze. They don't weaponize emotions. Their presence is emotionally predictable, in the best way possible. She's stable, not stagnant. She listens without judgment, reacts without drama, and communicates without turning everything into conflict. Her emotional maturity becomes his sanctuary. Because when he's with her, he doesn't have to explain his silence. She already understands it. In the modern world, emotional volatility has been mistaken for passion. Many relationships today are built on extremes: love that burns too hot, words that cut too deep, silence that punishes instead of heals. But the high-value man has outgrown all of that. He doesn't want a roller coaster. He wants rhythm. He wants a woman whose emotions don't swing wildly with every moment, but remain calm enough to create trust. When he senses emotional safety, something inside him unlocks. He starts sharing more. He becomes more open, more gentle, more expressive. Not because he's weak, but because he finally feels safe enough to be strong in a new way. And that's when love transforms from a game into growth. Because no man can lead the world if he's constantly defending himself at home. That's why the average woman, who's not trying to prove she's extraordinary, but simply is, ends up being the rarest of all. Her steadiness becomes the emotional foundation he builds his peace on. She's not perfect, but she's present, and presence creates safety. To the outside world, it may look simple, but to a high-value man, that kind of peace is everything. Because when you've fought your battles, conquered your goals, and silenced your doubts, all you want is someone who doesn't add to your storms, but helps you rest through them. Section 7. The truth about what makes a woman valuable. In the end, a high-value man doesn't see value the way the world does. The world looks at a woman and measures her by what she shows. But a wise man looks at a woman and feels her by what she gives off. Value isn't about looks, status, or lifestyle. It's about energy, the kind that brings peace, the kind that brings clarity, the kind that brings calm in a world that never stops screaming. What makes a woman truly valuable is not perfection, it's presence. It's her ability to stay grounded when life gets loud. It's the way she can turn a house into a sanctuary, not with material things, but with her tone, her warmth, her patience. It's the energy that says, "You're safe here." That's the kind of value that can't be faked, copied, or bought. It's born from character, from the way she treats people when no one's watching, from the way she carries herself even when no one's clapping. High-value men recognize this instantly. They've seen the difference between temporary attraction and lasting peace. They've felt the thrill of desire and the exhaustion that comes after it. That's why, when they meet a woman who carries peace instead of pretense, they know she's rare. Because while everyone is busy trying to stand out, she stands still. She doesn't chase. She doesn't compete. She just is. That stillness, that calm, that quiet self-respect. That's what makes her unforgettable. Because she doesn't need to remind anyone of her worth. Her silence already speaks it. And in that silence, a high-value man hears everything. Maturity, peace, loyalty, depth. It's not about perfection. It's about alignment. She doesn't need to impress him because she's already in tune with the same frequency he lives by. Growth, balance, and peace. A woman becomes valuable the moment she stops trying to be valuable to others and starts becoming valuable to herself. When she knows her peace is her power, her boundaries are her beauty, and her calmness is her confidence, she naturally attracts men who mirror that same discipline. Because energy recognizes energy. A man who's built his peace will never invest it in someone who thrives on chaos. That's why high-value men often choose women the world overlooks. Because while others chase the spotlight, he's searching for something far rarer. Peace of mind. And when he finds it in her, she becomes his definition of value. Not because she was perfect, but because she was real. Not because she had everything, but because she never needed to pretend she did. At the end of it all, the truth is simple. A woman's greatest beauty is her peace. Her calm is her magnetism. Her presence is her power. And to the man who has learned what really matters, that kind of woman is not average. She's everything he's been searching for. At some point in a man's journey, everything changes. He stops chasing pleasure and starts protecting peace. He stops craving admiration and starts craving authenticity. The older he gets, the wiser he becomes, the less impressed he is by the things that once controlled him. The makeup, the attention, the performance, the show. They all lose their power. Because now, he's not seeking stimulation. He's seeking substance. That's the quiet truth high-value men already know. Beauty fades, status shifts, and attraction evolves. But peace endures. It becomes the currency of mature love, the kind that doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to perform. It just exists, steady, secure, sacred. And that's why they often choose women the world calls average. Because they're not looking through the lens of fantasy anymore. They're looking through the eyes of peace. They're looking for the woman whose energy feels like home. The one who doesn't drain their mind but recharges their spirit. The one whose simplicity, honesty, and grace remind them of what truly matters. Alignment. To the high-value man, an average woman who carries peace, humility, and emotional maturity is rarer than diamonds. She doesn't pretend to be perfect. She just knows how to love without chaos. She doesn't make his life harder. She makes his purpose clearer. She doesn't add drama. She adds direction. Her presence brings silence, the good kind, the kind that makes him breathe deeper, sleep better, think clearer, and dream louder. Because in that silence, something profound happens. He feels safe to be himself. Not the image, not the title, not the mask, himself. That's the kind of peace no amount of beauty or status can replace. That's the kind of energy that high-value men never let go of once they find it. So the next time someone says, "Why would a high-value man want an average woman?" remember this. The question reveals more about the world's values than his.